Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive. We're going deep today with discourse analysis.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's something I've been wanting to look into for a while now, and
Yeah, it's really relevant, I think, to so many things that we come across every day.
absolutely. And we found this great paper
Yeah.
called Unit3.pdf.
Catchy title.
It's a very catchy title, but it's got some really good information on grounded theory and discourse analysis.
Uh-huh.
So, when we talk about discourse analysis, we're talking about not just what people say, but how they say it.
Yeah, the meaning behind the words.
Exactly. And this can be really helpful for, I'm thinking like if you're going into a meeting and there's a lot of academic jargon,
Oh, yeah.
or if you're trying to understand like media messages, or even just like family conversations.
Well, absolutely. Decoding those?
Right. So much there.
Yeah.
That can be unpacked with discourse analysis. And we're going to get into all of that today.
Yeah, and this paper actually has some really interesting points about how we can use discourse analysis to, deconstruct concepts, uncover, hidden motivations, and even understand the link between language and power, which is...
Well, that's a big one.
It's a big one, yeah.
So I'm really excited to dive into this.
Me too.
So why don't we just jump right in?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So first things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say discourse analysis?
Well, it's kind of tricky because there isn't one clear-cut definition, but one way to think about it is that it's a way of looking at communication and how language creates meaning.
Okay, so it's not just about looking up words in the dictionary. It's about understanding the context.
Exactly. We go beyond individual sentences to analyze larger chunks of communication.
So looking at a whole speech or a news article or even a conversation.
Exactly, and understanding how all of those pieces fit together to create meaning.
So instead of just looking at the words themselves, we're looking at the speaker's intentions, the audience, the broader social context.
Right, all of that.
I see. Okay, so it's like we're putting on our detective hats.
Ooh, I like that.
Right, we're looking for clues in the language to help us understand the bigger picture.
Exactly, you're looking for patterns, metaphors, events like how people structure their sentences to understand what's really going on.
Okay, this is really making me think about so many conversations I've had where I'm like, wait, what was the real message there?
Right, or those times when you read something and you're like, I'm not sure I'm getting this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where discourse analysis can be really helpful.
Okay, well, let's get a little more specific then.
All right.
So our source material actually uses this definition I thought was really interesting. It says, discourse analysis is the study of how versions of the world, society, events, and even our own thoughts and feelings are created through language.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So it's basically saying that language isn't just a neutral tool.
Right.
It's actually shaping how we see and understand the world around us.
And our place in it.
Yeah, that's pretty profound when you think about it.
It is.
And it also highlights that there isn't just one objective reality, right?
Right. Everyone brings their own perspective.
Exactly. Our understanding of the world is shaped by, the words we use, the interactions we have.
Our experiences.
Okay, so how do we actually apply these ideas? Where do we even begin?
Well, like any good investigation, we start with some basic assumptions.
Okay, lay it on me.
So first, discourse analysis recognizes that both the researcher and the subject bring their own perspectives to the table.
Okay, so it's acknowledging that everyone has their own biases and that those biases can affect how they interpret language.
Exactly. We're not pretending to be perfectly neutral observers.
Right, because that's impossible anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the second assumption?
The second is that reality is socially constructed through language.
Okay, so you're saying that our understanding of the world isn't fixed or objective?
Right. It's constantly being shaped and reshaped through the way we communicate.
So how different cultures have different words for things?
Yeah, that's a great example. Different languages often have different ways of categorizing the world.
Right, and that can really impact how people see and understand things.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the third assumption?
This one's all about us. We are products of social interaction.
So our identities and beliefs are shaped by how we communicate with each other.
Precisely. It's like we're all in this giant conversation,
Yeah.
and our individual voices are shaped by the voices around us.
I like that metaphor. It's like we're all part of a giant choir.
Yeah, and the way we sing together creates the overall harmony.
This is fascinating. It makes you realize how much power language really has.
It does, and it's just the beginning. There's a whole world of theories and approaches to discourse analysis that we can dive into.
Okay, well, I'm ready. Let's keep going.
All right, so let's talk about some of the big players in discourse analysis. We've got modernism,
Okay.
structuralism, postmodernism, feminism, each with their own unique perspective on language.
I'm already feeling a little overwhelmed, but in a good way.
It's a lot to take in, but it's worth it, I promise.
Oh, okay, so let's start with modernism. What's that all about?
Well, modernism is really focused on how language evolves as we learn and progress as a society.
So it's about, like, finding the perfect words to describe the world.
In a way, yeah. Modernists believe that language should be precise and accurate.
Okay, so it's about using language to represent reality as accurately as possible.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be important for things like science and technology.
Right, we need clear and unambiguous language to communicate complex ideas.
Okay, what about structuralism?
So structuralism takes a slightly different approach. It sees language as a system of interconnected elements where the meaning of each element is determined by its relationship to the others.
So it's like a puzzle where each piece only makes sense in relation to the other pieces.
Exactly. And the way those pieces are arranged creates the overall meaning.
So you're saying that the meaning of a word can change depending on the context.
Precisely the same word can have very different meanings depending on the sentence it's in.
That makes sense. Okay, so what about postmodernism? How does that fit in?
So postmodernism comes along and kind of shakes things up. It challenges the idea that there's one single objective truth.
Okay, so it's saying that everyone has their own perspective and that all perspectives are valid.
In a way, yeah, postmodernists focus on the diversity of human experience and how language is used to construct different realities.
So it's more about interpretation and understanding different perspectives rather
Yeah.
than trying to find one definitive answer.
Exactly. And this is where the work of Michel Foucault becomes really important.
Okay, tell me about Foucault.
Well, Foucault was a French philosopher who argued that discourse is inherently linked to power.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he believed that the way we talk about things, the words we use, the stories we tell, all of that can shape how we see the world and who has power in that world.
So like how certain groups might be marginalized or silenced through language.
Exactly, or how certain ideas might become dominant simply because they're repeated over and over again.
Wow, that's really powerful.
It is, and it's something we need to be aware of as we analyze discourse.
Okay, so we've got modernism, structuralism, postmodernism. What about feminism?
So feminist theory comes in and says, hey, wait a minute. We need to pay attention to how gender is constructed through language.
Okay, so it's looking at how language can reinforce gender stereotypes or create power imbalances between men and women.
Exactly. And it's not just about the words themselves, but also about who gets to speak and who gets listened to.
Right, like how women's voices have often been silenced or marginalized throughout history.
Exactly. Feminist discourse analysis is all about bringing those voices to the forefront and challenging those power structures.
This is making me think about all sorts of things, like how language is used in advertising to target different genders.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
Or how certain professions are coded as masculine or feminine.
Absolutely. And all of those things have real-world consequences.
This is amazing. It's like I'm seeing language in a whole new light.
That's the power of discourse analysis.
So we've got all these different theories swirling around in my head. Now, how do we actually apply them?
Well, there are some steps we can follow to conduct our own discourse analysis.
Okay, give me the steps.
The first step is target orientation.
Okay, so that's where we decide what we want to analyze and what questions we're trying to answer.
Exactly. We need to set the scope of our investigation.
Okay, and then what?
Then we move on to data collection.
So we gather the materials we'll be analyzing.
Right. This could involve transcripts, speeches, articles, social media posts, even recordings of conversations.
Okay, so we're gathering all the evidence.
Exactly. And then comes the fun part, data reduction.
Oh, I love reducing data.
So this is where we go through all the data we've collected and identify the most important pieces.
So we're looking for patterns, themes, key ideas.
Right. We're trying to find the nuggets of gold in all that information.
And finally, we get to interpretation and analysis.
This is where we put all the pieces together and draw some conclusions.
So we connect the dots, explain the significance of our findings, and answer those questions we posed at the beginning.
Exactly. And this is where those theories we talked about earlier can really come in handy.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together, but it also sounds like a lot of work.
It can be, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
And I bet there's some really cool software that can help us analyze all that data.
Oh yeah, there are some amazing tools out there that can analyze text and identify patterns.
So it's like we have a digital assistant helping us with our detective work.
Exactly. But as our source points out, human interpretation is still key.
So we still need to use our brains.
Absolutely. Those machines can't do all the thinking for us.
Okay, good, because I like using my brain.
Me too. It's what keeps things interesting.
Well, this has been a fascinating dive into the world of discourse analysis, and I'm already starting to see language in a whole new light.
Me too. It's amazing how much we take for granted.
Yeah, but now I'm feeling like I have a new set of tools to unpack all those hidden messages.
Exactly. And those tools can be incredibly powerful.
This is making me think about all sorts of examples in my own life, especially at work. But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Where are we going?
let's talk about some of those basic assumptions that underlie discourse analysis. Can you break those down for us?
Of course.
Let's do it.
So first, discourse analysis recognizes that both the researcher and the subject have their own perspectives that influence how they see the world.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're acknowledging that there's no such thing as a perfectly neutral observer.
Exactly. Everyone brings their own baggage to the table.
Right. Our experiences, our beliefs, our values, all of that shapes how we see the world.
And how we interpret language.
Exactly. So it's important to be aware of those biases, both our own and the biases of the people we're analyzing.
Absolutely.
Okay, what's the second assumption?
Second, discourse analysis assumes that reality is socially constructed through language.
Okay, so you're saying that our understanding of the world isn't objective?
Right. It's shaped by the words we use, the stories we tell, the ways we interact with each other.
So it's like we're all constantly creating and recreating reality through language.
Exactly. And that's a powerful idea.
It is. It makes you realize how much responsibility we have as communicators.
Absolutely. The words we choose matter.
Okay, and the third assumption.
The third is that we as people are products of social interaction.
So our identities, our beliefs, even our behaviors are influenced by the people around us.
Exactly. We're constantly learning and adapting based on our interactions with others.
Okay, so it's like we're all in this giant dance where everyone's steps influence the overall flow.
I like that analogy. It captures the dynamic nature of how we shape each other through communication.
Okay, so we've got these three basic assumptions.
Yeah.
Now, how do we actually apply them?
Well, that's where the fun begins.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's talk theories.
Ooh, theories.
Our source mentions a bunch of different theories that inform discourse analysis.
It's like a buffet of ideas.
It is, and it can feel a little overwhelming at first, but understanding these theories can really help us apply the concepts to real-world situations.
Okay, well, let's break it down then. What theories are we talking about?
All right, so we've got modernism, structuralism, postmodernism, and feminism. Each of these theories offers a different lens through which to analyze discourse and its impact on our understanding of the world.
Okay, so it's like we're putting on different pairs of glasses to see language in different ways.
Exactly, and by wearing those different glasses, we can gain a more comprehensive understanding of how language works.
I like that analogy. Okay, so let's start with modernism. What's the modernist perspective on language?
Well, modernism really emphasizes the idea that language is a tool for representing reality.
Okay, so it's about finding the right words to describe the world around us.
Exactly. Modernists believe that language should be precise and accurate, and that it should evolve as our understanding of the world evolves.
So it's about using language to reflect reality as closely as possible.
Right, and this is particularly important in fields like science and technology, where clear and unambiguous language is essential.
Okay, so modernism is all about precision and clarity. What about structuralism? How is that different?
So structuralism takes a different approach. It focuses on the underlying structures of language and how those structures create meaning.
Okay, so it's less about the individual words and more about the relationships between them.
Exactly. Structuralists believe that the meaning of a word is determined by its position within a system of language.
So it's like how the meaning of a note in music depends on its relationship to the other notes in the scale.
Exactly, or how the meaning of a chess piece depends on its position on the board.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. So the same word can have different meanings depending on the context.
Precisely, and that's one of the key insights of structuralism.
This is fascinating. It's like I'm seeing language in a whole new way.
That's the beauty of discourse analysis. It challenges us to think differently about something we use every day.
Okay, so we've got modernism and structuralism. Now what about postmodernism? How does that fit in?
Postmodernism. This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, okay, I'm ready for it.
So postmodernism comes along and kind of shakes things up. It challenges the idea that there's one single objective truth.
Okay, so it's saying that everyone has their own perspective and that no perspective is inherently more valid than another.
Exactly. Postmodernists believe that reality is socially constructed and that language plays a key role in that construction.
So it's like we're all creating our own realities through language.
In a way, yes. And that means that there are multiple truths, multiple ways of seeing the world.
This is blowing my mind. It's like all the rules of language are suddenly up for grabs.
In a way, yes, postmodernism is all about deconstructing those rules and challenging those assumptions.
And this is where Michel Foucault comes in, right?
Exactly. Foucault was a key figure in postmodern thought, and his work has had a huge impact on discourse analysis.
So what did Foucault have to say about language?
Well, one of his key insights was that discourse is inherently linked to power.
So the way we talk about things, the stories we tell, the words we use, all of that can shape who has power in society.
Exactly, and it can also be used to marginalize or silence certain groups.
That's a really important point. It's like how certain words or phrases can be used to dehumanize or stereotype people.
Exactly, and Foucault argued that we need to be aware of these power dynamics in order to challenge them.
This is making me think about all sorts of things like how language is used in politics to shape public opinion.
Oh, absolutely. That's a classic example of how discourse can be used to wield power.
Or how language is used in the media to frame certain issues in particular ways.
Right, and all of those things have real-world consequences.
So it's not just about understanding language for its own sake. It's about understanding how language can be used to influence people and shape society.
Exactly. Discourse analysis gives us the tools to see those power dynamics and to challenge them.
This is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got modernism, structuralism, postmodernism. What about feminism? How does that fit into the mix?
So feminist theory comes in and says, hey, wait a minute. We need to pay attention to how gender is constructed through language.
Okay, so it's about looking at how language can reinforce gender stereotypes or create power imbalances between men and women.
Exactly, and it's not just about the words themselves, but also about who gets to speak and who gets listened to.
Right, like how women's voices have often been silenced or marginalized throughout history.
Exactly, and feminist discourse analysis is all about bringing those voices to the forefront and challenging those power structures.
This is making me think about all sorts of things, like how language is used in advertising to target different genders,
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
or how certain professions are coded as masculine or feminine.
Absolutely, and all of those things have real-world consequences.
It's amazing how much we take for granted the impact of language in our everyday lives.
It is, and it's one of the reasons why discourse analysis is so important. It helps us see the world in a new light and to understand the hidden power of language.
This has been an incredible journey into the world of discourse analysis, and I'm already starting to see language in a whole new way.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
like we've unlocked a secret code.
Yeah, and that code can help us understand everything from our personal relationships to the global political landscape.
It's a powerful tool for understanding the complexities of human communication.
So where do we go from here? What's the next step in our discourse analysis adventure?
Well, now that we've got a good grasp of the theoretical foundations, let's talk about how to actually put these ideas into practice.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's get practical.
All right, so let's say we want to do our own discourse analysis. What are the steps involved?
Yeah. Is it like a recipe we can follow?
It's not exactly a recipe, but there is a systematic process you can follow.
Okay, give me the steps.
The first step is target orientation.
Okay, so that's where we decide what we want to analyze and what questions we're trying to answer.
Exactly. We need to set the scope of our investigation.
Okay, what's next?
Next comes data collection.
So we gather the material we'll be analyzing.
Right. This could involve transcripts of speeches, articles, social media posts, even recording conversations.
Okay, so we're gathering the raw material for our analysis. And then what?
The next step is data reduction. This is where we sift through all the data we've collected and identify the most relevant and meaningful pieces.
So we're looking for patterns, themes, recurring ideas.
Think of it like panning for gold.
Okay, so we're looking for those nuggets of gold in a mountain of information.
Exactly, and technology can be helpful here. There's software that can analyze text and identify patterns.
Ooh, that sounds handy.
It is. But as our source points out, human interpretation is still key.
So we can't just rely on the machines to do all the thinking for us?
Not yet, at least.
Okay, good, because I like using my brain.
Me too. It's what keeps things interesting.
Okay, so we've narrowed down our data. What's the final step?
The final step is interpretation and analysis.
This is where we draw conclusions based on the patterns and themes we've identified.
Exactly. We connect the dots, explain the significance of our findings, and answer the questions we posed at the beginning.
So it's not just about describing what we found, but about explaining its meaning and relevance.
Precisely. And remember, the strength of our analysis rests on the quality of our arguments and the evidence we present.
So it's like building a case in court.
Exactly. We need to present a compelling argument supported by strong evidence.
This is fascinating. It's like becoming a language detective.
I like that analogy. It captures the spirit of discourse analysis.
But it also sounds like there's a lot of room for subjectivity.
There is, and that's one of the criticisms of discourse analysis.
So how can we be sure that our analysis is reliable? How do we know that someone else wouldn't come to a completely different conclusion?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll need to explore further.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's keep digging.
All right, let's dive deeper into the world of discourse analysis.
I'm ready for it.
So we were just talking about the potential for subjectivity in discourse analysis.
Yeah, and how that might make it hard to ensure that everyone's coming to similar conclusions when they analyze the same material.
You're right to point that out. It's a valid concern, and one of the criticisms of discourse analysis is that it lacks a standardized format.
So there's no set of rules everyone follows.
Not exactly, and that means that different people might interpret the same data in different ways.
Okay, so how do we deal with that? How do we make sure our analysis is as reliable as possible?
Well, the key is to be really transparent about our methodology.
So we need to clearly explain the steps we took
Right.
and the reasoning behind our choices.
Exactly. And we also need to support our claims with strong evidence.
So it's like building a case in court.
Exactly. We need to present a compelling argument that's backed up by solid proof.
Okay, that makes sense. But even then, there's still room for interpretation, right?
Absolutely. And that's part of what makes discourse analysis so dynamic and engaging.
Okay, so it's not about finding the one right answer.
It's more about having an ongoing conversation and using evidence to support our interpretations.
I like that. It's like we're all detectives working together to solve a mystery.
And the mystery is language itself.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that discourse analysis can be applied to a wide range of areas like understanding historical events,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
or even social practices.
Absolutely. We can use discourse analysis to understand how certain ideas and beliefs came to be.
So it's like using language as a window into the past.
Exactly. For example, we can look at historical texts and speeches.
And see how people were talking about certain issues.
Right, and how those conversations shaped the course of history.
That's so fascinating. It's like we can travel back in time through language.
In a way, yes. And it's not just about understanding the past either.
So we can also use discourse analysis to understand the present,
Exactly. We can look at how language is being used to shape our current social practices.
like how we talk about things like mental health or climate change.
Those are great examples. The language we use can either help to break down stigma or it can reinforce it.
Right, and that can have a huge impact on how people seek help or how policies are shaped.
Absolutely. So by understanding how language is being used in the present, we can start to use it more consciously and responsibly.
Okay, that's a really important point. So discourse analysis isn't just about analyzing language. It's also about using that analysis to make a positive impact on the world.
Exactly. It's about empowering people to use language in a way that promotes understanding and creates positive change.
And I remember earlier we touched upon something called Critical Discourse Analysis, or CDA for short.
Right.
It felt like we were just scratching the surface of that one.
Yeah, we're just getting started. CDA is a whole field of study in itself.
And it seems particularly relevant to the media and broadcasting world.
Oh, absolutely. CDA is all about uncovering the hidden power dynamics and ideologies embedded in media messages.
So it's like looking beyond the surface level of what's being said and trying to understand the deeper messages that are being conveyed.
Exactly. For example, a CDA researcher might analyze how a particular news outlet frames a certain issue.
Like how they choose their words or the images they use.
Right. All of those things can influence how viewers understand the issue.
And it's not just about news either, right? CDA can be applied to all sorts of media.
Absolutely. We can use it to analyze movies, TV shows, advertising, even social media posts.
It's like having a secret decoder ring that helps us see the hidden messages in everything around us.
That's a great way to put it. And the more we understand those hidden messages, the more empowered we become as media consumers.
So it's about becoming more critical thinkers and not just accepting everything we see and hear at face value.
Exactly. CDA gives us the tools to question those dominant narratives and to challenge those power structures.
This is making me think about all those times when I've felt like something was off about a news report or an advertisement, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it.
CDA can help us articulate those feelings and to understand why we're reacting the way we are.
So it's like giving us a language to talk about those subtle forms of manipulation and persuasion.
Exactly. And that language can be incredibly powerful.
This is really eye-opening. It's like I'm seeing the media in a whole new light.
And that's just the beginning. There's so much more to explore within CDA.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper. Let's keep diving.
All right, let's explore some of the key implications of CDA.
I'm all ears.
So one of the most important things about CDA is that it allows us to become active agents in exposing inequality and injustice.
Okay, so it's not just about analyzing language for its own sake. It's about using that analysis to make a difference in the world.
Exactly. By critically examining how language is used to construct and maintain power structures.
We can start to challenge those structures and create a more just and equitable society.
Precisely. CDA gives us the tools to deconstruct those dominant narratives and to amplify the voices of those who have been marginalized.
This is inspiring. It's like we're reclaiming the power of language and using it to fight for social justice.
That's the spirit. And another key implication of CDA is that it helps us to denaturalize those taken for granted aspects of ideological messages.
So it's about helping us see the world in a new light and questioning those assumptions that we might have been unconsciously absorbing.
Exactly. CDA helps us to peel back the layers of meaning and to expose those hidden agendas that might be lurking beneath the surface.
This is making me think about all those times when I've just accepted something as truth without really questioning it.
CDA encourages us to be more critical thinkers and to always ask, who benefits from this message?
Right, because every message has an agenda, even if it's not always obvious.
Exactly. And CDA gives us the tools to uncover those agendas.
This is powerful stuff.
Okay.
So the CDA helps us to challenge inequality, denaturalize taken for granted assumptions. What else?
Another important aspect of CDA is its interdisciplinary nature.
So it's not just for linguists.
Absolutely. CDA draws on insights from a variety of fields, including sociology, political science, anthropology, and history.
So it's a truly holistic approach to understanding language.
Exactly. And that makes it a very powerful tool for analyzing complex social phenomena.
Okay, so CDA is interdisciplinary. It helps us challenge inequality.
Yeah.
It denaturalizes taken for granted assumptions. Anything else?
Well, CDA has also been instrumental in fostering cross-cultural studies.
So it's being used to analyze media texts from different cultures?
Exactly. And that can help us understand how different cultures use language to construct meaning and to reinforce their values.
That's fascinating. It's like using language to travel the world and to gain a deeper understanding of different perspectives.
And by understanding those different perspectives, we can start to break down those barriers that divide us.
This is really making me think about the importance of diversity and inclusion, not just in terms of representation, but also in terms of how we understand and interpret the world.
Absolutely. CDA reminds us that there are multiple ways of seeing the world and that we need to be open to those different perspectives.
Okay, so CDA is interdisciplinary. It helps us challenge inequality. It denaturalizes taken for granted assumptions. It fosters cross-cultural understanding. Anything else?
Well, I think the final point to emphasize is that CDA reminds us that language is not a neutral tool for communication.
Right. It's deeply embedded in power relations and ideologies.
Exactly. Every utterance, every text, every interaction is shaped by a complex web of social, cultural, and historical forces.
So we can't just take language at face value.
We need to be aware of the contexts in which language is used and the power dynamics that are at play.
This has been an incredible journey into the world of discourse analysis, particularly CDA.
It has been quite a deep dive.
Yeah, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
There's always more to explore.
Okay, well, let's keep digging then. Before we wrap up this CDA conversation, I'd love to circle back to content analysis.
Oh, yeah, content analysis.
That quantitative approach to discourse analysis that we mentioned earlier.
It's a different way of looking at language.
Right. It's less about interpretation and more about quantification.
Exactly. Content analysis is all about systematically summarizing content to identify trends and patterns.
So it's like using a statistical lens to understand communication.
Precisely. For example, imagine you're a researcher interested in understanding how climate change is portrayed in the media.
Okay.
A content analysis would involve gathering a sample of news articles or social media posts about climate change.
And then analyzing those texts to see what kinds of words or phrases are being used.
Exactly. You might count how many times certain keywords appear.
Like global warming or climate denial.
Right, or you might look at the overall tone of the coverage.
So is it generally positive, negative, or neutral?
Exactly. And by quantifying these things, we can start to see some interesting patterns emerge.
So we might find that certain news outlets are more likely to use negative language when talking about climate change.
Or that the tone of the coverage has shifted over time.
That's fascinating. It's like we're using data to tell a story about how language is being used.
Exactly. And those stories can be incredibly insightful.
So content analysis can be used to answer a wide range of questions about how different topics are portrayed in the media.
And how public opinion on those topics might be evolving.
That's really valuable information. It can help us understand how language is shaping our understanding of the world.
And it can also be used to inform strategic decision-making.
So it's not just for academics?
Absolutely. Content analysis is used by marketers, media professionals, political strategists, all sorts of people who are interested in understanding how language works.
This is making me think about how I could use content analysis to analyze my own social media feeds.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. You could see what kinds of messages you're exposed to on a daily basis.
And how those messages might be influencing my thoughts and beliefs.
Exactly. It's all about becoming more aware of the power of language.
This deep dive into discourse analysis has been mind-blowing.
It really has. We've covered so much ground.
From the theoretical foundations to the practical applications.
And we've seen how language shapes everything from our personal interactions to our understanding of global events.
This is making me want to go back and analyze every conversation I've ever had.
I know, right? It's like we've been given a new set of lenses to see the world through.
And those lenses can be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They can help us understand the complexities of human communication and to navigate the world in a more informed and empowered way.
Okay, so we've talked about discourse analysis in general. We've explored CDA. We've touched upon content analysis.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But I'm sure there's still so much more to learn.
Oh, absolutely. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired to keep exploring.
That's the spirit. Discourse analysis is a lifelong journey of discovery.
I'm excited to see where it takes me.
Me too. And I'm sure we'll have many more deep dives into language in the future.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time in the theoretical world of discourse analysis.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of heady thinking.
We have, but I think it's important to bring it back down to earth a little bit.
Right. How can we actually use these ideas in our everyday lives?
Exactly, because understanding discourse analysis isn't just about becoming a language scholar.
It's about giving you the tools to decode the messages you're bombarded with every single day.
Right, and to understand how language is being used to shape your perception of the world.
Think about those marketing campaigns you see everywhere.
Right.
They're not just randomly throwing words and images at you.
There's a strategy behind it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by applying a little discourse analysis, you can start to see how those messages are being crafted.
To target specific audiences.
Right, and to evoke certain emotions.
So we can start to see those subtle cues that are trying to make us feel a certain way about a product or a brand.
And once you start noticing those cues, you can't unsee them.
It's like a whole new world opens up.
Exactly. And it's not just marketing either.
Right, this applies to everything.
Think about news articles, political speeches, even those heated debates on social media.
Oh yeah, those can get pretty intense.
They can, but by understanding the principles of discourse analysis, you can start to see past the surface level.
And identify the underlying messages and power dynamics at play.
Exactly. You become a more critical consumer of information.
Less susceptible to manipulation or persuasion.
Exactly. You're in control.
I like that.
Huh.
And you know what else?
What's that?
Discourse analysis isn't just about analyzing other people's communication.
Oh, it goes both ways.
It's also about becoming more aware of our own language.
And how it might be impacting others.
Right, because we're all constantly sending out messages, whether we realize it or not.
So as you go about your day, pay attention to the words you use.
And how those words might be interpreted by the people around you.
Just think about the tone you use, your body language. All of those things contribute to the message you're sending.
It's like we're all walking billboards.
In a way, yes, we're constantly communicating, even when we're not saying a word.
This is making me think about all those times when I've probably said something without really thinking about how it might land.
We've all been there, but the more aware we become, the better communicators we can be.
So it's a process.
Absolutely, and it's a process that never really ends.
Because language is constantly evolving.
Right, and so are we.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been a real journey.
And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to keep exploring the world of discourse analysis.
It's a fascinating field with so much to offer.
So keep those analytical lenses polished and keep questioning the messages you encounter in the world.
Because language is power.
And the more we understand that power, the more we can use it for good.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support helps us keep creating valuable content like this. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and